Hey guys, Steven here from ProTech. Today we're going to talk about how to replace the slide lock spring on the shield. That's the little spring that has a tendency to pop out of its pocket right here and disable you, the owner's ability to field strip the gun, to take the slide off. That's a problem when you want to disassemble your gun, field strip your gun, take your recoil assembly out, your barrel, and clean your slide and all that. And what I did for a while was I just limped mine along. I'd just take a little screwdriver and I'd stick it in this hole, a little flat blade screwdriver, stick it in there and push that spring against this, this plastic piece that the spring goes into, just far enough to where I could slide the slide off. And I'd try to, maybe bend it in there and get it back in its hole, and it would never stay in its home. So then I just broke the end of it off and did a function test on the gun, and it disabled the slide lock, obviously. So then it just flops around. And that's a problem because when you shoot it and the slide lock doesn't have any downward spring pressure on it, rotating it down and away from the slide, and if your thumb isn't resting on it, then let's see here. So if your thumb's resting on it and you're a right-handed shooter, most likely you're not going to have any issues. But if you go to shoot left-handed and the gun cycles, the slide lock will pop up. And if I had a high-speed video camera, I would show you what happens. But as the slide comes back and the recoil impulse hits the frame does this. And when it does this, the slide lock pops up into its pocket, its intended pocket when it's intended to function, and will lock your slide up. And then every time you gotta release your slide forward to take another shot. So that's obviously a game stopper for this gun. So if your spring is outside of its pocket, I recommend stop carrying the gun, contact Smith and Wesson. If you're not tech savvy enough to replace it yourself, ship it to them. They're probably going to have it for 4 to 8 weeks, sometimes more, sometimes less. I've heard a varying range of numbers for that. If you are tech savvy, send them a message with your serial number. Go on the website to technical support. Send them a message with your gun serial number on it, and they will mail you a couple of replacement springs in a cute little bubble pack envelope with a packing slip and some other crap. And then a little bag with a couple of springs in it. And they even got a part number on there. Part number 4221800. That's the part number right there. 422180000. And they'll send you 2 of them. Ain't that nice? So then to replace it, I haven't replaced mine yet, so we're going to kind of go through this together. Of course, unload and show clear. Make sure your gun's empty. Pull the trigger. Actually, no, this is not a Glock. Lock the slide back. Rotate your takedown bar clockwise to its downward position, right like that. Release the slide forward. Then you'll pull the trigger, and then the slide will come off. Okay, and then you can leave the slide as is. You can, take a moment to clean it if you want. If you can't get your slide off, pull your slide back, rotate that down, bring it forward, and then as you're bringing it forward and as it snags on that spring right there, push that spring in with a flat blade screwdriver just enough to get your slide the rest of the way off. And if it's the only gun you got, I'd recommend let Smith and Wesson know about it first. Carry your gun while it's still functioning. and wait for your springs to come in. That way, in case you break it coming off, you won't be out of commission until you have a new spring in hand. And then the new spring looks like this. Cute little guy, isn't it? And so now let's see if we can figure out how to replace this. I think all you'll need is a whacker and one of these punch thingies. A ball peen hammer is what I'm using with a 1/8 inch patented Harbor Freight steel punch. You could use a brass punch if you wanted. I think I got a brass punch right now. I got a whole bunch of punches. And I got some stare-it punches for you stare-it guys. And then if you're cheap and you don't have one of those really cool armorer's blocks, you can use a shell cartridge container from a box, a plastic one, to get your device up off the table so you can drive pins out of it. And it looks like this pin is a one-way pin. It's big on this side and little on this side. So I'm assuming we need to push the little end towards the big end. So let's do that. Look at that. I don't even know that I would have needed a hammer for that, but I like to just give it a little tappy. Tap, tap, taparoo. Okay, so now before I pull this out, I want to look at it one last time and see what is going to grenade. I probably should have looked at that before I did it, but what's going to come loose when I do this? It looks like the trigger return spring is going to come loose when I pull this out. So I'm not going to pull it all the way out. I'm going to pull it out the right side of the gun just far enough to where it will release this slide lock, or to where I believe it will. So I pulled it out about 1/4 of an inch, and I can see down inside that hole there is a little spring. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a little coil spring that hooks onto the trigger, and that is what returns the trigger forward. And it looks like without further disassembly, that would be difficult to replace or to get back into position. Not impossible, just maybe difficult. So, and I'm trying to do this with as minimal amount of disassembly as possible. And we're doing it together so you can see all of my bloopers and everything. Ain't that nice? Well, it feels loose, but it's not coming out, so we're probably going to go ahead and have to remove this guy. This is the chunk of steel that the barrel engages into to unlock the barrel from the slide. Some people call it the unlocking block. Okay, so now if you've got another punch, you might want to whip it out so that you can keep your first punch intact. I'm going to do that just in case I don't have to remove that little spring. So it's nice to have a bunch of punches if you got them. If you don't have them, just pull it out and deal with it. Okay. So now I'm going to drive the little coil spring out. That little coil pin, not coil spring. Yeah, it does have some springiness to it. I think I'm going to drive it out. Okay, you're definitely going to need a hammer for this one. Alright, and there's that spring right there. That's, some people call them spring pins, coil pins. It's not a slotted pin. Slotted pins don't look like this. They don't have coils on them. A coil pin is a piece of sheet metal that's rolled, over and over. It looks like a little cinnamon roll, but don't eat it. Okay. Okay, so it looks like we're just going to have to go ahead and pull this pin out, and this little spring is going to go click. Okay. Actually, there's not a whole lot of tension on it in the forward position. Okay, so both those pins are out. Now this block should come out. Should. I quote, should come out. Maybe. Okay, don't use your punches unless it's a big punch as a pry bar. Use something else. I don't have anything else handy, so I'm going to use this. This is a nail punch, so it should take prying quite well. I always cringe when I see somebody use a 1/16 of an inch punch to pry on something. Like, no, the poor punch. Okay. What's going on here? What in the wide world of sports is going on here? Let's see. I believe I can fly. No, I believe this unlock block should pull out of there. I think I'm going to have to remove that slide takedown pin there. Okay. So I believe this piece has to come out next. We're going to get through this. Just stay with me. Don't die. Okay. Little rubber mallet action. Get it back down in its hole. Oh boy. Yeah, it's definitely going to come out of there. Okay, so I'm not sure if you'll need to do this step yet or not, but I'm going to. I'm going to go ahead and remove this coil pin and pull the trigger block out, and I might as well just go ahead and clean the gun while I'm at it. But, so I think I'm going to remove this pin. Bam. It's in there. Well, it's a it's a coil pin. It's meant to, probably not meant to ever really be removed. So I mean, I don't recommend doing this, removing this spring and this coil pin unless you have to. So there's that one. And look at that. Boy, those guys at Smith and Wesson are smart. They made the pins the same size. Huh. Ain't that nice? Okay. Alright. Woo! She dirty. Yeah, you're probably not going to want to take this thing apart. Unless you like putting watches back together. So that's the trigger block, comes out, and the trigger bar's got a little rod on the end of it that pushes in there. Hopefully they poka-yoked it, so it looks like I could maybe stick that in there a couple different places. I see where it goes. It goes in this little channel right here. That little channel right there. There's the camera. That's the channel it goes into. And it's it's a solid metal trigger block. Pretty good construction. A MEM part. MEM parts are very strong. It's a good looking trigger block. Okay, now that that is done, can't get the trigger out without pulling this off anyways, but I went ahead and discoed it just because disco is short for disconnected. It's one of those high speed, low drag words. Out of it. Okay, that's how that comes out of there. You gotta talk to it. Aha! Yeah! Gosh. Okay, it's got a little key on it, a little keyway. See that little nipple right there? It's got a nipple on it. And you have to rotate this thing. I don't know if you saw me kind of jiggling it back and forth. You got to rotate it till that nipple lines up with the keyway. You see the keyway up here on the top right of that hole. Right there. I don't know if the camera's focusing because I can't look at this and at you at the same time because the light is on my head. I guess I could go like this. Yeah, see that little... It's up on this side, right here, of that hole. There, you can see it. That's it. Okay. So rotate your takedown bar and just keep rotating it until it lines up with that key. Looks like it's got to be kind of up in this area. So it's got to be about like that to come out. And then once that comes out, then the unlock block and slide lock will come out and fly everywhere. Okay? Now hell, I might as well just go ahead and take the trigger out too while I'm at it. So I guess if you're looking to drop in some whiz-bang aftermarket trigger into your shield, you gotta pretty much strip it down to the bare bones frame. So, there she is. That's another MEM part. And then this is a... Okay, so the slide lock goes in there like so. Okay, and that's the left side of the gun, so it goes in like this. Right, like that. Okay, so then the little spring. And they send you two, isn't that nice? Maybe they're planning on you losing one, or they're planning on the gun breaking again. I don't know, but it's nice that they send you two. So then that spring, there's a little slot in here, and that spring goes in that little kind of crook there. Looks like a shepherd's hook. I don't know if that's what it looks like or not. But hey, it looks like they even put a little crook in the top of the spring there. See that little nipple on top of it? That might hold it into that pocket that the original spring jumped out of. That might have been their fix for that problem after they released the gun. It's okay. This gun had a lot of issues when it first came out too, and I held off for about a year before buying mine, and still had a problem with it. But I've been carrying it for almost 2 years now. No, a little over a year. Time flies, but it doesn't fly that fast. Okay, so with that little crook in it, it doesn't appear to want to really go in that pocket easily, so you might need to give it a little tappy. So I'm going to put the long side of the spring, I'm going to put this side of the spring in the pocket first. Okay. And then if I can get the spring to stop sticking to my finger, I am going to put a punch on it. I'm going to punch on it. There we go, like that. Come on now. Good. Sometimes you just have to talk to it. Go to your home. Turd. Okay, Smith and Wesson. Put something in there next time to hold this thing captive. It's not going in there. Alright, so I'm going to modify this spring a little bit because I think that leg is a little bit too long. I'm going to take off just a little bit of material off the end of that. I should not have to do that. This is a production part. On a production part, you should not have to modify it. It should be dropped in ready, but for some reason I'm having a difficulty doing this. So, alright, and I'm also going to cheat and use my vise. So it looks like you might need, a bench vise for this part of it, possibly, if your spring is acting the way mine is. And maybe a bigger punch, so your punch doesn't slip off of the side of the spring while you're trying to make it go to its home. Okay. Okay, so looks like I did need to remove a little bit of material from the tip of that spring in order to fit it down in there. Smith and Wesson, if you watch this, you might want to shorten that thing up just a tad. Okay, so it pops down in its pocket right like that. So what I did is I used my hammer and my punch to get the top part in there first, starting at that end and work my way that way. And then I bent the spring a little bit, flexed the spring up a little bit in this direction, and it popped right into its pocket. So now we're ready to put the gun back together. I'm just going to go ahead and put it back together for you guys so you don't have to sit here and watch me clean it. I mean, it's still working, right? So, and all that carbon buildup is going to give me good corrosion resistance, right? All that carbon, unburnt powder. It's still functioning. So. The barrel's nice and clean. And when you wipe your face, be careful, don't wipe your face with your fingertips, because then you'll have a black spotty face. I'm not racist either. I have a lot of black friends. Don't judge me. Okay. And how do I put this back together? Alright, so we're gonna put the trigger in there. So this is that little spring I was talking about on the trigger that I was trying to keep in place initially. Then I discovered there's no way I'm going to be able to keep that in place. And it looks like they designed it to have pretty much minimal spring force on it when inserting it or when assembling or disassembling. So I ought to be able to get that pin in there pretty well. So now that I got the trigger in there, this tip on the back of the trigger bar goes in here, in here, that little channel right there. Okay. I don't know how much more descriptive I can be about that. So, right like that. Okay. Goes right in there like that. Okay. And it just slides all the way back. And you kind of see how the back of the trigger bar, this is the piece that engages with the drop safety in the slide right there. That little button right there. It pushes it up out of the way and allows the striker to go past it and hit the primer on the base of the cartridge. Okay, so that is in place. I'm going to go ahead and start the pin in the hole. I'm just starting it in case I need to back it back out. It is a pretty tight fit. Nice and tight. Okay. Alright, now. Alright, Meow. Drop this in here. Okay, so I just put the trigger bar back in there. Or that's the trigger bar. The unlocking block / slide lock spring holder / slide takedown bar retainer / I don't know, maybe you could call it maybe a trunnion. This piece right here goes in like this. So this is the right side of the gun, and this is the right side of the piece. See how it kind of angles forward. It'll only go in one way, I think. Let's try to put it in backwards. Yeah, it won't go in backwards. So make sure your spring is in place, so we don't have to do this again. So I'm not making another video for you if you forgot to put the spring in. You're gonna have to figure it out. Okay. All right. Oh. Gotta put this guy back in there. So, put him in his pocket on the side of this unlocking block. There's where your slide locks. So you gotta kind of compress that spring a little bit and get it in place right like that. Okay, and then that assembly drops down in the gun like so. Okay. Right like that. And then, while that's loose and movable, let's take this pin, the pin that the trigger pivots on, so let's call this the pivot pin, or the trigger pivot pin, or the trigger pin. You can correct me in the comments if you'd like. I don't care. Let's see here. Different companies call them different things. Alright, so let's be smart. Let's go through the other side with a punch. Because you can see light through the other side. So now I've got a 1/16 punch going through there. It's going through the trigger, through the unlock block, and through that little spring that's down in there, the trigger return spring. Now I'm going to use that, and as I push this pin, the pin with the shoulder on it, with the head on it, as I push this pin through the hole, I'm going to use this punch. I'm going to rotate it back and forth to help line the trigger and that spring up with pin. Okay, oh, sorry, I hid it from you. But yeah, you just kind of finagle this thing in there while you're looking at it. You kind of have to angle the punch this way, this way to flex that spring far enough forward to get this pin through the end of it. Okay, once you get it through that spring, you're pretty much home free. Just got to push it into place. Okay, so there we're in, and do a quick test. Make sure that it's indeed connected to your trigger and that your trigger is returning, because if it's not, you need to pull it back out and engage that spring. Okay. Now, what we're gonna do, now we can take and put this back in its hole. I think. Gosh, it's a 32-minute long video. Oh my goodness. I hope it's worth it to somebody. If it was worth it to you, put something in the comments, please. Because I've invested a lot of my life into this video. I feel like I have. And I at least want to know that it helped one person. Okay. So I don't need this. So time to go ahead and drive this coil pin the rest of the way in, because I don't believe I'll need to remove my trigger block. Before I do that, though, I'm going to go ahead and start this one, since this hole is already lined up. I can see through there and see everything is lined up with it. Okay. So it's generally a good idea, if it doesn't go, don't just whack it harder. I know that's kind of the American motto sometimes. But look at the pin, maybe lead with the side that has a little more taper on it. If it doesn't go in starting, from one direction, maybe try the other direction. Because you don't want to have to replace the pin too. Or maybe you want to, but I don't really want to. Okay. So it was going a lot easier there, so we're going to go ahead and drive it home. Try not to hit your hand. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and drive this one home. Remember what I said a minute ago? Don't hit your hand. Okay. I don't need that yet. Okay. If you're gonna do, your own gun repair, do yourself a favor. If you're a cheapskate, go down to Harbor Freight and buy the set of punches that they have. The little black steel punches. There's half a dozen or a dozen of them. They're cheap and effective, and they even sell little ball peen hammers. So I imagine for about $10 to $20 you can get out of there with a set of punches and a decent hammer. to be able to do a job like this in the comfort of your own home. Okay, it's obvious that this gun is meant to be put together one time. So you definitely don't want to be disassembling this gun like this really ever, other than to replace parts or upgrade parts, but don't take it down past this point. This is a fully assembled frame. When cleaning the gun, just take and put you know, toothbrush and some solvent on it, brush it out as best you can, maybe blow it out with an air compressor, put a little lube back here in the trigger assembly, and leave it be. Let it eat. So, but now let's test it. And let's see if it locks back. It didn't. Look at that. And the spring is in place. And let's see if I can take the slide off. I can. Perfect. So there's the little spring. Right there. That's the one. So if you've got your gun in a situation where it won't let you take it down, let's unload it, of course, slide forward, and stick a screwdriver or something in there and push on that spring. That little spring is right in there. Maybe if the camera will focus on it. It's right in there. Okay. And push it real good. Push it in there. Try to get it into the pocket. Okay. And then carefully lock your slide back. Rotate your takedown bar forward. If it popped out, go ahead and with your takedown bar rotated down, get it to this point where it's okay. It's catching on it. All right, it's not. I'm simulating that, but push it in there. Okay, pull your trigger, push it in there, and while you're pushing in on that spring, push forward on the slide with your thumb. So I'm pushing in on the spring through this little pocket and pushing forward on the slide to get my slide off. Okay. There you go, guys. That's how you can replace the slide lock spring on your Smith and Wesson Shield 9mm to keep from having inadvertent slide locking while you're trying to use the gun to defend yourself. So hopefully nobody has an issue with these in reality. If they ever have to use it to defend themselves, I'm sure if they do, it would probably be a big problem for them and for the manufacturer. But it looks like the new spring is a great fix. So if you have a gun where that is occurring, mine, I noticed it was wearing down because it scrubs against the inside of the slide. Once it pops out of its little pocket, it scrubs against the inside of the slide, and mine was about halfway worn down. Now I put about 2,000 rounds through my gun before I really started fiddling with that spring, because I just went ahead and pushed it in there every time when I went to take the slide off. No big deal. But really, if yours is doing that, go ahead and take the time to replace it, or have Smith and Wesson replace it, or have a certified gunsmith replace it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.